Welcome to this episode of Wanderlust Solo Women Travel Unscripted. Real women, real stories, real journeys, and no filter. Join Gina, your host, to share the experiences and stories of solo female travelers and advocates from all over the world, with a mission to empower women of all ages, backgrounds, and life stages to embrace solo female travel with confidence and enthusiasm, while being authentic and real, unscripted. Confronting the challenges and apprehensions many women face when considering solo adventures, providing inspiration to break through those barriers. Sharing how life transitions, loss, and trauma can lead to amazing experiences, rediscovery, and life journeys. The good, the bad, and the ugly of authentic and honest travel. So let's throw out the script, get comfy, and jump right into this episode.
Joining me is Ritter Fischer. She is an American writer, social media contributor, and solo world traveller. In 2019, Dawn made the bold decision to leave behind the conventional life, embracing the unknown to explore the world in her own terms. 6 years later, she has purposely crafted a life of meaningful experiences, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Her first travel memoir, Let's Not Play Small, a memoir of divorce, healing and reinvention through solo travel, is interseeded with candid storytelling infused with vulnerability, sage life lessons, love stories, and empowering messages for women of all ages. It's an inspiration for more than just solo travel. It's a rallying cry for any woman at a crossroads in her life. Her message is simple, yet profound. Age is no barrier, and living an extraordinary life is available to anyone who dares to refuse normal. So let's dive in to this exciting episode. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Wanderlust Solo Women Travel, where we explore the wild and wonderful world of solo female travel. And we've got the perfect person to discuss and have the conversation about solo female travel with Dawn. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we've been trying to align this podcast episode for so long. So I'm just super excited that finally the stars aligned and we're here together. So that's really awesome. So it's so good.
Hopefully we stay online and all the good stuff. So you never know when you're in two different continents.
No, because Dawn's coming in from Albania today, aren't you?
I'm in Albania right now, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll dive into that a little bit later on in the episode. But I like to start each show with a paso paso question. And I love this question for you because I think you'll have a lot of insight into it. So the question is, what advice would you give your younger self in order to find happiness and joy?
Well, I think that I have a lot of thoughts on that, but probably the main thing is that I would tell her that that happiness and joy that we are told that we're supposed to want or deserving of or what have you, throughout our lives, it doesn't come at the finish line of a perfect relationship or a perfect, job or the houses, the cars, those kinds of things. It comes when in the everyday things that we do and listening to our own voice, right? And purposefully, instead of other people's opinions, listening to our own voice and, what that happiness and joy means to us and specifically looking for that in the everyday little things. It doesn't come at the end of something. It's in the everyday little things. Probably most importantly, what I would also tell her is that it's okay to outgrow people and places and versions of ourselves that just don't seem to fit anymore. It's okay to walk away from that.
I love that. And I think as, 50 plus women, that's so important because like you said, there's societal norms and we've got these goals that we've got to achieve, and we get there. And sometimes there's that sense of emptiness or non-fulfillment, and, happiness and joy are real basic things. I get joy out of it is the simple things, watching my dog play, watching a sunset. I know it sounds corny,
no,
but it is.
It's not at all.
Yeah. And it's not, and it isn't over. It's not when you get to 30, okay, you got the house, you're married, you got your kids. So it's not over then.
Right.
And we can restart, can't we?
We can. And I think that sometimes with midlife, I think we try and wrap it up a little too tight sometimes. And I love to see that so many women are out in the world talking about it. And you with, your platforms talking about it, because it feels like we've been trained throughout our lives to that by a certain point and by midlife, like we'll have it all figured out. We'll understand, like we'll have a structure to our life, and we'll know like what our identity is. And that's just not true, right? What I
Oh.
found is that in midlife is when women are starting to question everything,
Yeah.
right? About their lives. And that's the beauty of it, I think, is really starting to, listen more to our desires and our interests and our intuitions and start to follow those as opposed to what everyone else thinks we're supposed to be doing at that point in our life.
100%. And it's only because I'll be 55 soon. So I've got hindsight. If someone had told me some of this when I was young, I was like, what? You're going to be 50 and not have everything worked out and aren't you supposed to have all that
Yeah.
stuff worked out? Like, nope.
No.
And
And
it's
to
a
me,
great
that's the
time.
beauty of life because we should never be done sort of like peeling back layers of ourselves, right? Like I think it continues and should continue for me. The a joy of my life is continuing to do that, right? Because there's so many things that I believed about myself or what I should be doing that were simply untrue. And when I started
Yeah.
examining them, like by doing the book, like throughout the book, it's just like I was shocked, kind of like at all of these expectations that I was just like, well, that's not really true about who I should be right now or how I should be thinking or how I should be living. Like who convinced me of that?
Yeah, so true. And like mentioned in your bio, you have written this book about your reinvention and exploration, through your transition. Firstly, before I get you to explain a bit about the background of the book and how it came about, I'd love to know how you came up with the name Let's Not Play Small. Where did the name come about?
Well, the name came about actually after my divorce. And I was starting to challenge myself because I was alone now and and for the first time in, many, many years. And my kids were out of the house and I was starting to have to do some things solo and that kind of thing. And I started challenging myself to take little steps into things that I was afraid of. Right. And I came up with this like daily, moniker of let's not play small. And it was just a daily reminder for me, like a little voice in my head saying, okay, you want to do that thing, but it seems really scary. So are you going to like walk the other way or distract yourself and do something different? Are you going to like walk into that? And when I started walking into those things, I realized that when you get to the other side of it, that's where like your growth, and your experiences that help transform you come from. We talk about this term like transformation all the time when it comes to solo travel, right? But for me, it's pretty simple. For me, transformation just means taking small steps towards something that's kind of scary for you, getting to the other side, and then you start to get the courage and the confidence to take the next step. Like for me, initially after my divorce, it was just entering a restaurant by myself,
Yeah.
right? It was as simple as that. And then it became like, as I built this life and created this life, it became about a bunch of other things. But I quickly learned that, like, if I was scared, like a voice in my head would be saying, okay, let's not play small. So what are you going to do? Okay, I need to choose this because that's kind of scary right now. And I learned by doing that courage and confidence never comes before the action of doing anything. That courage and confidence comes after the action.
Yeah.
The small step, you get some courage and some confidence. It leads you through the next big step. You gain more courage and confidence. It builds on itself. But that courage and confidence that I've learned by kind of challenging myself with this let's not play small is like came only after the actions. And so let's not play small. It's just my daily reminder and I use it as a hashtag in my writing online and that kind of thing. And it's funny because there's people in my life who will be in conversation and they'll say, I don't know, I'm thinking about doing this. And, that it'll get kind of quiet and they'll be like, okay, right. Yeah. Let's not play small. I'm going to have to do it. So yeah, it is like, it started as just a reminder for me, but it feels like it's like spreading the more people read the book. And I love that.
I love it. It's like it's your mantra. It's very
It is.
cool. And
It is. I have a hat with it. It's my daily reminder because even though like I've done these things and created this life, and I'm a person who craves, really, because of that. Let's not play small. I started to crave discomfort, right? Which even now, I get restless after a few weeks because I'm craving like a new city and not knowing anything and trying to figure out the trains. And I'm a person that craves that stuff, but I didn't used to be. It
Yeah.
came from taking these steps over time.
Which is really interesting, and that sort of leads into, about your book and how that story came about and why you wanted to share that message. So, for the listeners out there, can you just elaborate a bit more about basically what your book is about, but how it came about and why you wrote it also?
It will, we could go in lots of directions for that.
You pick
I
anyone
was
you want
I know, because
to.
I always like to say when I do these kinds of things, I like to start out really by saying saying who this book is not for, right? Because I think it helps set the stage for like everything that came later and how I grew this. But if people are looking for a book that's like a Lonely Planet, travel guide or like life guide of some sort that keeps everything predictable and comfortable in your life, this is not that. This book is not that. This book is about not just not even telling you where to travel or where to go. It's about asking you who you might become when you do go.
Yeah.
So I started this book because it was I started this lifestyle really because I was coming off of a tough divorce. And again, like I had said, I felt like I had lost my structure in life and even partly my identity. And I've realized as I've created this life and gone through a lot of different chapters of it as a solo female nomad, that a lot of other women are in the same situation. Young women as well as midlife women, right? It's not just about like the women who want to take a solo trip. It's about women who are coming off of, it's post-divorce and they're saying, what am I doing now? Or
Yeah.
retirement. And it's like, is this it? Like, there's got to be something more. I moved to a new city or, whatever it is that feels a little bit scary for them. And I just really wanted to share some of the lessons that I've, gathered along the way. It's like so in my heart to share this with women because I feel like I wrote the book that I wished that I had to read when I was going through those things. I didn't even think
Yeah.
about being a solo traveler at one point in time, but it was like after my divorce and the kids were grown and I was having to do everything new and for the first time and, and all of that. And so Let's Not Play Small is a memoir of why and how I created this life for myself. After the loss of my marriage, I found out my husband was gay. And so that, the marriage ended, but that became an impetus for me for growth and transformation in my own life. We talk
Yeah.
about how, our experiences in our life, like form us, right? That was the biggest impetus for me to create really a whole new life a couple years later after that divorce happened. And I had an opportunity for an early retirement with my job. And I spent a year figuring it out. And I was thinking about how many times I had, because after the divorce, I did start like slowly doing some solo travel on my own. And when I had the opportunity for the retirement, I thought to myself, like, of all those times when I was doing my solo trips, like how I felt and how strong and confident I felt when I was on those trips and I was meeting, these people and especially other strong women, along the way. And so I decided to take that retirement, sold everything, rented my house and hit the road for what was supposed to be probably just like 1 year at the beginning. And 7 years later, this is going on year 8, actually. And I write about all that in the book, and how I did it and all of that. And then, I proceeded to like travel to, across 7 continents and like sleeping on cargo ships and sailing the Caribbean and having, relationships in new places. And, all of that just stretched me in ways that I never expected. So I share a lot of that kind of thing in the book. Because again, it's for women who are thinking about solo travel, but it's also for women who are like at any other place in their life where they're just like, hey, this seems kind of scary. I think maybe I should do it. But
Yeah.
at the core of this book is really what happens when we summon the courage to do the thing that scares us, right? That scares us the most. And I explore themes of judgment and, family relationships, friendships and trust, like all the things that affect us in whatever kind of life that we're living.
Yeah.
And I think that why this book has resonated with so many women, and especially women of all ages, and some men too, actually, is that I don't like tie it all up in a neat little bow. I
Yeah.
share the messiness. I share the fear when I was starting over, the fear after my divorce, the fear when I was leaving my house for the first time, and there was no turning back. I was going to South America, and what was going to happen was going to happen.
Yeah.
I share the love stories, and all of these things are shared through like the lens of my travel stories. So it's fun. It can be raw. It can be vulnerable. It can be emotional, but it's real. I think that that's what I hear from a lot of women. It's just that it's real. And at the end of the book, so
Don't give it away. Don't give the ending away.
well, I'm just talking about the bonus, which is important. So at the end of the book, I put this whole other bonus content section in the book. It's everything you need to know to travel solo. So when I was writing this book and I was taking some like publishing courses and writing courses and all this kind of stuff, and there was this woman that led one of those. I won't mention any names, but there was a woman that led one of those, and we were supposed to say what our book was going to be about or what we were writing. And I said, well, mine is a memoir, my solo travel, but it's also going to be like tips and tricks for women who want to solo travel, all the apps and the resources and the packing lists and safety like all of those kinds of things. And she said, you can't do that. You can't put memoir and self-help together in a book. And I exited that call pretty quickly and said, watch me, because the core of this book is my internal journey, right? The beautiful things that transpire when we start to trust ourselves again. And for whatever it is that you're doing. But solo travel is just such a big part of my life. And I've learned so much in these last years. And I belong to all these solo travel groups that women are in. And I hear these same questions all the time. They're the same questions all the time. So I said, I can answer all of these. And it's quite an extensive bonus content section at the end of the book, but it's super valuable for that. But really at the core of this book is my internal journey. And I think that internal journey inspires a lot of women to do one of their own.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. Firstly, I think it's very cool that you had that bonus section at the end of the book, and who cares what that lady said. So good on you for doing that. I like bonuses. I don't care what they're
I
like.
let it stop me for too long. I kept going, okay, they'll just one or the other and watch it. And then I was just like, no, because like I'm publishing this myself. I can put whatever I want in it. Why wouldn't I put two books in one? Like, think about that. Women get two books in one. Seriously.
Yeah. So I'm super glad you did that. I think it's really, really cool. And also, I think, like you said, and you've been in a lot of women's travel groups, your story resonates because we've been through it. I've been through exactly what you've been through, and I hate to say it, sometimes it is trauma that gives you a bit of a jolt to scarily, and it is very scary to change your life from what you've known. And for something, like when you have a separation or something traumatic happens, sometimes it can be literally overnight too. And all of a sudden your world's upended, all your normal things are gone. And it's really hard in the moment. And I think I love that you're sharing that there are hard bits. We see all of these things on social media and these wonderful eat, pray, love moments. And those things do happen. But there's a lot of shitty, messy stuff in between.
There is, and I talk about like loneliness a lot in my book, because that is something that, again, is such a major theme for women, like in these travel groups and things, like sort of like fear of the loneliness. And it's real, right? It is an emotion. But what I've learned through these past 7 years about that is that I really need to stop when I'm feeling that way. I really need to stop and think to myself, like, is this true loneliness? Like, am I just really missing my best friend at home? I should probably give her a call. Or am I really just, am I really in a place in my life now where I think I might want to have a partner? But then the third thing to that I learned to examine for myself, because this isn't, I'm just saying what happened with me, not what every woman needs to do. I never do that. But for me, it was like, or am I feeling this way because I'm seeking distraction from something else much deeper that's going on inside of me? And then I had to you know, set to the task of, unpeeling those layers again. And sometimes it is just loneliness. Sometimes it's great. I get a call with a friend and it's all, and it's all good. I feel good again, or I have some dates, or, whatever the case may be. But I think having some resources available to yourself, or knowing what works for you, it's a call to a friend, it's a going out and taking a walk, it's some yoga, it's some, I write sometime, a lot of times when I'm feeling that way. But if it's true loneliness, there are tools that you can use for that. But also you have to decide whether it's that or it's just a distraction from something else that you're really thinking of.
That's a
That's a
really
that's
good
a hard
point.
one to kind of hurdle over.
Yeah.
You have to slowly move through it.
Yeah, because I think when I was traveling solo, when I did it in my 40s, it was more the times I had more, I suppose, free time to myself that then loneliness would kick in. And
Mhm.
that's such a good observation, actually, because while I was busy and either, doing stuff with people I'd just met on the road, or I had an agenda where I was going somewhere or doing something, I was okay. But it was those moments where I might have had a few days and nothing to do,
Yeah.
and your mind starts going elsewhere. And then
Yeah.
so you start to feel, a bit sorry for
Yeah,
yourself.
that's when we need to stay in that place though, but right? Because that's where our growth is happening. That's where we're learning, like, there's something else going on, that if I can't be by myself and in my a quiet space for this minute, there's probably some stuff I need to be addressing here, you know?
Yeah, and I think, what your book talks about with your experience, like I just mentioned before, it's many people's experiences, is because when you start recognizing this stuff in yourself, and I think that's where when you travel, and okay, I use travel as the tool, but it's when we're traveling we get to recognize these different personalities and
Mhm.
personas and feelings that we might not have felt or seen when we were at home in our comfort zone. So
Yeah.
have you felt that too, like when you're out exploring and in the world and doing your thing, this is when all these things have come up?
Yeah, I think for sure I explored those things more since I started this lifestyle than I ever did before, right? Like, I think that when it comes to loneliness, or or whatever else it is that you're trying to transform or to address within yourself, I think a lot of that comes from being disconnected with. And for me, no, I mean, I was always really, I mean, throughout my life, I've been pretty introverted. Not when I'm with friends and that kind of thing. Then I can be, whatever. But, what I didn't like about myself when I first started this lifestyle was that for too long, I let myself, that, first year, avoid walking into crowded restaurants, or avoid doing this by myself, or avoid doing that by myself. And there's only so long that you can do that stuff before you're
Yeah.
just like, good God, you're like a 56-year-old woman. You need to get over this. Why is this happening? And for me, one of the biggest moments of, like, epiphanies I think I got was when I realized that I was afraid to do a lot of these things because of judgment. I was fearful of the judgment of others. And I think that is at the core of so much of what women struggle with, whether it's solo travel or just, stepping into anything that makes them uncomfortable, is what are others going to think? And unfortunately, I think that that's instilled in us since childhood, right? You hear a teacher say something, or you hear a neighbor say something about someone else's kids or whatever. And it doesn't even have to be a negative thing, but you quickly learn that like the world is full of invisible measuring sticks, right? Like everyone's kind of looking and saying what everyone's saying about everyone else. When I realized that and I thought, I'm making all these stupid choices not to enjoy the things that I think that I will enjoy or try something different because I'm afraid of something of this judgment from other people. And I don't even care about their opinions. I mean, not anymore. So I'm just like, that was completely false. That took a while. I still struggle with that sometimes, right? If I feel uncomfortable at something, it's just like, there's that fear of judgment. Like, stop. Those people, they're not in your life. What do you care? Their
Yeah.
judgment comes from their own fears. It's not my reality, right? So anyway, like that's just an example of some of the transformation I think that comes, and it doesn't end. I think it's continues every day, but for me, taking little steps every day and recognizing what it is that I don't like about myself, or that I want to improve about myself, or that I should improve for the betterment of the world. You've got a little something to work on every day. And, it's not sitting in, therapy all day long, but it's
Yeah.
thinking things as you're wandering the streets, as you're sitting in cafes, if you see beautiful interactions between people, it really just allows you to go deeper inside. And I don't know. I found a really beautiful life, created a really beautiful life for myself by doing this. It's not for everyone, but it works for me.
But I think sharing your perspective is really important, and I think too, and it's a part of a journey I'm still going through even now, and it's an uncomfortable part when you're recognizing your own. I don't want to use the word shortcomings, but like uncomfortable truths about
Mm.
yourself. And I
Yes.
don't mean that in a negative way either.
Right.
It's just acknowledging certain things about yourself and then you can work on them, and I think that's where travel was great for me. It was, well, still am a bit of an introvert. I know they've got a new name and I can't remember what it is for those people that are introvert extroverts. Apparently it's a new thing, but
That are both.
yeah, yeah, I can't remember what the name is, but
I think that I'm both, but here, like, I
yeah,
write about this in the book too, because I think sometimes women might think that like, to solo travel, that you need to be extroverted and be the life of the party and be able to like go and talk to people and, and that kind of thing. But I don't think that's true. Like, I think actually that it is a benefit to be introverted. I have a bit of introversion in you when you're solo traveling, because I think introverts are people who are thinking and truly seeing and sitting in what they're seeing and considering these things. We're not so interested in having the next thing to say and having the next person to talk to. We're really examining the things around us. To me, I think some of the best travelers are people who are a little bit introverted. I think not best travelers. I don't want to say that, but maybe the people who get the most out of solo travel are people who can be a little more introspective like that. And in my world, in my experiences, it's women who are a little on the introverted side. I mean, I kind of think I'm both. There is a name for it. You're right, but I'm
yeah, I've
both.
just read about it. Yeah.
I'm both, but I really love the introverted side of me and what that's created for me, and what that has taught me these last 7 years in this solo travel life.
Yeah, because I know you just shared a post about witnessing the interaction with a father and son at
Mm.
a restaurant. I'll get you to explain that a little bit but why I loved that is exactly what you just said, is that time to sit back and observe. I quite often do that. I will sit at a cafe. I mean, we call it people watching, I suppose, but observing life.
Yes, it
You know,
is.
like like the story, would you wanna share that little snippet about the
Yeah,
father and
sure.
son? Yeah.
And I think you don't have to be a solo traveler, or be, in a different country. Like, these are things that you can do, in your own routine, at home. And that is to like really pay attention. I think people watching is different than paying attention. Like, and I can explain that later. But
Yeah.
so the story that I shared was one that happened, I wrote about when I was in Buenos Aires, and that was my first um first couple years of solo travel. And I was just sitting at this restaurant, nice little restaurant with tablecloths and, on the sidewalk, and I was waiting for some food to be delivered. And there was a father and a son sitting, kind of close to me and, well dressed. The kid was like hair all combed back, his shirt tucked in, his like, ready smile, that kind of thing. And he was just very cute. And I saw coming, down the street, this father and son duo, who were, you know, obviously unhoused, right? And they were stopping at tables. The father was, asking for money at the tables. And I noticed I was watching the boy more than anything because his discomfort was palpable, right? The eyes were darting. And I saw it as the way I wrote about it as, from my perspective, was that he was used to not having a safe place for his eyes to land on, right? Like every place that, in his world, regardless of what he thought about it, I mean, the father's feeding his kid. Like this is how I see that kind of thing. I know people will disagree with me, but like if I was in a situation and I had to feed my kid, you better believe that and I was desperate, I would be at those tables as well. So that's just my thing with that. But anyway, so they kept walking towards us and I was just like, okay, this is, let's see what happens with this interaction with the, obviously comfortable man and his son that were sitting next to me. And the father of the other kid, put his hand out, said something, and the father at the table, like just shook his head, like, no, kind of, that kind of thing. But the little boy with the shirt tucked in and the cute, drinking his orange Fanta with a straw, took his Fanta, took his soda and handed it to the little boy. And it was like, again, I just shared this again on social media the other day because it was such a beautiful interaction between that showed just a connection regardless of skin color or like, lifestyle and wealth, inequality and, and all of that. And it was just like those boys, just like their eyes connected for a second. And there was just something there
Yeah.
that gave me hope, and that's, the world's a tough place right now. And the more we can look for little actions and even be a part of those things that give somebody else some hope, it's a very good thing to do.
And I think you are right. There is a difference between people watching and observing, and it's observing on that deeper level.
Mhm.
When you see something that maybe someone else can't see, like a look in a person's eyes or
Mm.
the way they're holding themselves, and then that
Yes.
creates a whole story and narrative, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I catch myself. I know when I'm just people watching and being distracted, and I know when I'm actually observing,
Yeah.
right? People. And I love to be the observer because I love to write about these kinds of things. It feels good for me to share those kinds of observations. But sometimes I am just people watching and I'm watching the tourists rush by with their fanny packs and following the leader with their umbrella or their
Yeah,
big
the
thing. And I'm
stick.
just like, they're so busy trying to hold their phone and all these things that they're, missing the back of the Duomo. It's like, I understand that because sometimes I am that person as well.
Yeah.
But for the most part, like I like to encourage people and I talk about it in the book. I really encourage women when you're solo traveling or even just in your day-to-day life to just take a pause. Just take a pause, clear the brain and look closely at what's happening around
Yeah.
you. It's a very different experience.
And those moments for me have sometimes been the most powerful moments. They're the ones
Yes.
that stay with me.
It shifts your perspective, right? It shifts your perspective about yourself. I think it shifts your perspective of the world. Yeah. So I'm out just always encouraging whether it's a solo trip or it's just a solo to the next city. There's
Yeah.
something about when you do something solo, that I think it changes our genes a little bit or something. Like it does something to women to step inside of that and allow us to feel more of the real world, feel more of our, of ourselves and our emotions and learn how to like identify certain things. So it doesn't have to be traveling solo out in the world. It can just be, whatever, a weekend somewhere or doing something that feels a little bit uncomfortable to you because
Yeah.
every time you do something that's a little bit uncomfortable, again, reminder, that's where your courage and your confidence comes from. It's not staying in a
Yeah.
place that's comfortable all the time.
And you can use the mantra that Dawn uses, which is let's
Let's
not
not
play
play
small.
small.
As every time that creeps in, you can use that. Because I was going to ask you, what is something or some advice you could give about overcoming those fears? And you have touched on it by taking those small steps. And I think that's a
Hmm.
really good reminder, because for some people, what you have done and the lifestyle you created, it's incredible and amazing and exciting. But for some, it might seem like way off and not
Uh-huh.
attainable for them. But
Right.
it's those small steps,
Yep.
isn't it? Like you said, it doesn't start with all of a sudden that big leap.
Right. I'm just a normal woman from the Midwest who I just decided to walk into that fear because and I do it on a budget. It's not like I'm, some woman with like millions of dollars or anything. I do it on a budget. And the thing that I like to say too is when people are fearful about doing something, whether it's a solo trip or just something new in their life, they've got that nudge going on that, it's time to do something. That nudge, that feeling is not going to go away by ignoring it. And the sooner we realize that and just go, what I really want, this is what I really want right now, right? Not what I really want 5 years from now. This is what other people are telling me I should want right now. This is what I want right now. And then we just, you take that small step and you get through that and you build on another small step. It doesn't have to be some big life-changing thing, that you do. You don't have to upend your life like I did. Again, it can be anything. You want to move to a new city or you just want to make a new friend. So that feels a little scary. Like it's anything, but we have to start with our internal journey and what's stopping us from doing those things that scare us.
And I love that advice and that perspective. And I think it's really important. I'm going to put Dawn's details of how to get the book, and how to find Dawn and follow her, because she's a real inspiration. I love all the things you share about how you have viewed your travels and the perspectives, because I think, like we've just touched on, having those moments where it's a deeper side and it's a lot more than just ticking things off. And I think that's a lovely
Yeah.
perspective. So I highly recommend people to follow you and get hold of the book, and I'll put that all below for
Nice.
everybody.
Thank
What
you.
is what is one of the favorite things? Like, is there a little piece of your book? Like, is there a real funny thing that happened to you, or a real out there thing that happened to you, or a really like, oh, thing that happened? Is there one particular moment that
Well,
stands out?
there's a
No,
lot of
it's a lot.
and yeah, I don't need to go into too much depth in that, but there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things in here that, like sometimes I think that I shared too much in the book. Until women contact me, and I love hearing from readers. So feel free to contact me when you read it and tell me what resonates with you. But I felt like in order to truly like share this whole life and what it all entailed, I had to be like completely honest about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Um, and women seem to like that, and I appreciate that because that's what I want to read too, right? I don't want somebody's glossed over opinion of how to, I don't know. Don't get me started on that. But so probably, the sort of the climax of the book is when during COVID, during the pandemic, I was actually in lockdown in India in Palalam, a very small little village in India. And that time really forced me to go inside myself and like address my fears. But it's just like I don't know, probably have 5 or 6 chapters in the book that are about that time frame. And, when didn't have a place to live, when everything closed down and I had to,
Wow.
struggle to go find, a place where I could be, where it would be safe. And then, I had like 12 hours and I had to gather some food because it was going to be a lockdown. And they locked down. I'm in this little hut that's like a plywood hut kind of thing, as you do on the beaches in Goa. And they're walking around with their, like, they were spraying some kind of insecticide, or not insecticide, but like, whatever, thinking, I guess that noxious spray was supposed to kill the germs or whatever. It was inside my place. I'm like, okay, I can literally like taste because it's coming through the here, or, or just like trying to find food. And, the little shops that were there, they were very tiny and food was running out, and they were preserving them for the Indian people. And I had no problem with that, but it was just a lot of those reckonings that happened during that time. But there was also beauty in that time, because the woman who took me in, and I guess there was about 8 or 10 others, others from around the world, who didn't get out in time before they shut the airports down. And she fed us, like, because food got really hard. And when that happened, she came to all of us that were staying in these little huts around her and said, I'll feed you guys twice a day. So she would, it was, and these people don't have that much, right? So there was so much
Yeah.
beauty in that. And, that was in 2020. And I went back and visited her just recently, and it was beautiful. Like it was just like no time had gone by. And I really
Yeah.
talked to her after I left. Like, you lose touch sort of as you do. But I needed to go back for my own, I wasn't going to let it scare me away from going back to India, right?
Yeah.
More to uncover. And I got to spend some time with her and her husband, who had been such a big part of my of my life during those times. And so that was really beautiful. So there's some really cool stories like that in there too.
I think that's actually a beautiful full circle moment, isn't it? When you can revisit something
It
like that.
did.
I mean, and
Yes.
I also just want to say, I can vouch that I really love, because you see books that are out there, and it's very, sometimes you don't get the opportunity to connect the author with the book, and you're very
Totally.
open about who you are and connecting. And I just want to say it's lovely to know that what you are sharing is from the heart, and I think that's the
Yes.
most powerful bit, that you genuinely want to share the powerful message to empower women. And I think
Yes.
that's so beautiful, and I just want to congratulate you on that. Be able to connect you to a real person, I think, is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Uh, Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy to
No,
get to know you too, and a couple conversations that we've had trying to like arrange this.
I know, align everything. And
Yeah.
on that note, what is the question you have for our next guest?
So my question for the next guest would be, what is the one thing that you want to accomplish yourself in the next year, big or small, and what is stopping you?
I might have to answer that one for myself as well.
Well, I think even the question that I had at the beginning was very much like, oh, okay. I think we all could use some of that. Like, what would I tell my younger self now that I'm, midlife? We're different people, but, kind of underneath, we're still the same. So
Yeah. And on that note, thank you again, Dawn. It's been a
thank you.
pleasure having you here,
Thank you so
and I
much.
really appreciate your time. And like I said, I'm going to pop all her information down below for you to find. So thank you again.
Yes. Talk to you soon.
And remember, everyone, to stay tuned for the next episode. And as always, it's never too late to unleash your wanderlust.
Thanks for listening. Please share the love by liking, commenting, or subscribing, or join us in our Facebook community.